someone acting up exactly like yesterday, waiting until I engage and stay engaged on purpose. Shame about the jet food in the background, but I was going to take this exactly different. I forgot about the audio. Could have just stopped the video. You would have seen last time. So, what's great, what if someone is like exactly 7 a.m. That's never happened in my entire days here. And they said, I'm gonna stop to eat, which is just me to maybe check everything. Yesterday they staring at me for no reason, and that's the probing part. He does that very often. Should see if he can abuse me or not. Because I decided to engage him today with more control. It's not at all. It's not a choice. It was more control by me, but it's not a choice. If it would mean a choice at a park, it's fucking easy. Anyway. Alright, so. What's going on? When I started out in closing, I didn't see any clothes in the bed. She leaves, I clearly didn't see any feeding. Things, barely any. All that. Or sushi, yeah. And then we and let's go. You go. Finish talking. By the way, the only reason everything is open because it's halfway mounted or halfway dismounted. You would be looking exactly in the same way if I was just starting early to close. And if you remember what it said about putting out the things when I arrive. When I arrive, you go down there and dismount everything. So, doing that. So, essentially it is. And the real trigger for that was the fact that I was eating food inside without doing any harm to anyone. And even in the second trigger, in case there's any doubt about intentions, was that I started closing down the second, not the second, but when it stayed there for no reason. I even for a second just waited until you see for that, but then realized that kind of broke. I prefer to just close the thing. And as such, wow, same elements as the yesterday. What's being said though, that's why I started this now. Feeling like, well, first off, he's always acting up as if I'm doing something wrong, just being selfish. Again, another long form of abuse. And that's hardly enough compared to the other ones. I mean, the only reason these things I have open and they don't have closed, they have open because they never got finished, was because the drugs that they threw me yesterday. That's what I would call abuse on my book. No, it's not. I take the other ones very serious as well. I'm just saying that it's not the common technology I have. As I mentioned before several times, same thing about the money. Remember when I said that? When I said that just because I won't actually expect certain things, it's not that any victim of this type of thing wouldn't expect. It's perfectly understandable, perfectly logical. Is that right? In a place where you see that right, but not really there. Currency of the kingdom, quite a lot of law, especially, is not the lingua franca, so to speak. You would have a lot of expectations as such. Okay, it wouldn't be surprising to me to see things like even happening in other countries. Anyway, like that. See how it's happening again? this is one of the macabre times I cannot actually explain, but word for word, sitting there, me try to close things, changes demeanor from what was very clearly doubting, not a doubting, not quite wishing as of fear, but wishing as equal doubt. Like unsure, not insecure, but unsure. That's what I mean. Down to very down to Mediterranean. Instead, then trying to make up angry, but again, clearly acting up, not real. For something in this case, because the things are halfway open, because from its perspective, it's supposed to be halfway closed, right? Like I'm already started early. All the things are collapsed. They're very clearly not enclosed. You would just assume that I'm already all the way through to closing and I stop a little bit to eat something, probably because I fell ill or whatever. And the fact that by the time when he spoke, I was almost with the entire breath closed and everything else good to go. Gets the meaning and the context that you need. But as I said, you heard his words. When I arrived, we had to get the thing down and good to go. Now, not justifying this being like this, but I'm saying it's not going to be like that for long. I want to stop now. Now what else? Then there's some further acting and some words that I generally could not listen to. I'll love to translate that for you. You can cross-check a couple other things, like me closing the things and the rest. And I said, no, it's here, and I'm closing now. You said to, what I just said to you. And I will stop eating now to put it in. And that's what I did. So this is an event just occurs at this point. You can make it a bit faster. finish this. Some context for it. This. To hold the file. I need the plastic pad. No. We'll reach the back here. But ports for you. Yeah, the two things I want to talk about. One is about the shit. Because there's a distinct smell of human excrement around the area that I smell every day and night, roughly, which clearly didn't went there by the work of the devil. Secondly, and unlike the cats, which bury their pieces and do that away from the place where they sleep, and says they never had the problem before. And if you notice, all the cats come here to eat, and you can prove that they don't defecate in the place where they eat. The main reasons why they even do that in the first place. And all the cats come here to eat, so it will be none of the cats. On the other hand, that's the one thing. The other one is the one you're seeing right now. With the caveat that if you remove from yesterday, as we were moving, as we left the boxes on the other side of the tree, disappeared in the way, the bag, the other side of the tree disappeared in the way back, which is important. Okay? Now remember that I mentioned yesterday that many of the things are just material off the front. And that could be faster, right? If I wanted to say, hey, look, I'm closing out in the front because you told me not to close the things in the back yesterday. And that would be an accurate statement of fact. But that type of attitude doesn't get you many places. And in a crime of being disenfranchised, you succeed a lot to accomplish anything. So instead, I'm choosing the evidence route. Now, again, if you're clever, you're not bragging about the crimes, that'll be a different story. But the thing is that they don't brag about the crimes for no reason. Both sides of the pie, right? Some of them try to be. That ain't happening. No criminal innocent person. Might be an innocent person that became a criminal. Happens actually incredibly often. But there ain't no such thing as both. In another way, perfectly mirroring Kanye. So the irony, and it's fucking surprising to be the comparison, it still stays true. Except that, unlike Kanye, which actually was a victim, a real victim at some point, not the real victim, but true victim of this. It never works, obviously, needless to say. On the first point, when you show up and shove some food in my face, as if that was the point. And that's from the argument, though. The argument is check on the evidence and see the argument. See there. Words and phrases. So, it doesn't appear off the front. Because any reasonable person would suspect that circumstance is something that is quite funny. Probably something coming over but it doesn't feel what I was saying is feel something that never happened. Never happening there. What happened for the first time there, you're concerned is at the front, right? So quickly as possible. And most of those things are kind of almost double work. I'm doing that today specifically for 8 o'clock. Matter of fact, if I don't know, sorry for Beta. It did say to me that I had about 8 o'clock to move the things from the front because it takes a long time to move the boxes down from the front, like from the top of the pile within the front. So, just some nice perspective for you. Not that it makes much of a difference. But as I said, as of yesterday, things are open to dry now. Even though it's going to rain again, actually it closes rather quickly. So that's my point today. But does it look much different? You get to the video from the other phone. So again, does it look that much different? To me, it's the same, right? Because again, either close this on the front or close it in the back. And this is my point. I'm not trying to be suspicious. Essentially just trying to go the main suspicious logic. Moving thing is actually a bit longer. And I was trying to do that. Tomorrow I'm going to do that. But I want to do that. Yeah, I was not doing this out of a lot of mud here, so I should stand back in the rain. No, so it was intentional. Well, as I said, as I did to the main crime, which led to the phone crime, you know. I think that I was probing for the phone crime. I think that the very idea that I should see how much I could do, which is very important. This is the very essence of this. And if you don't understand why, you don't know enough about this crime, serious. And I'm not going to explain it because it's criminal. But that is the very essence of it. You know what I just talked about the probatory behavior there earlier? Yeah. That same reason, but not about the today, but instead about the whole crime. And that was the deal. Okay. Which is why I almost always earn the punching or punching. Then you break it. And this is a stapler for most things. And if I have an idea to do something, most of the time it's don't. I even commented on that yesterday or a couple of days, it was 2 days ago, I think it's Sunday. And I said I could just save this for a better situation, but at the end of the day, the drug crimes are so overwhelming that not anything else, just the drug crimes. They take me down before I could use this in a good opportunity. Not just take me down as in sedate me. Take me down as in take any chance that I would have to realistically use that in a good way. And again, to this, you wouldn't believe how literally I say that they take this as a suggestion. Again, if you don't understand how 100%, and I don't use the word lightly, as I said, yeah, the person took the phone virtually to me and acting incredibly weird and saying weird things may not be a stalker, may be acting, may be trying to get me to think that it's a stalker. I rarely use the term 100% confident. I can guarantee to you, I forgot what I was saying. Some of those criminals for sure will be taking this as but no earpods. It's also important. I never listen to anything in the earpods, but I imagine there's a type of lie that beside some type of some time often. Just funny because you can prove it as a lie. Not even a mistake, but a lie. Because most of the time this is the only phone turned on. Little guy clearly doesn't have Bluetooth to connect, which means that connected to what? Right, and I'm trying to come up with a brilliant idea to answer this and see all of them answering at the same time, even though I don't think anybody asked him to this point. So how they collectively know. But and as I said, you can do this to all sorts of things. As I said, they believe that you'll be able to outsmart. If I can outsmart them as in casually, as you see like this in the middle of something, I'm quite confident you can do that. As with full preparation, resources, preparing, planning, and it's essentially like them into overdrive, right? Because again, and on top of that, you have the moral backing. So, while they think that they don't need to hide, you absolutely shouldn't. They think that they have resources. You have, well, not saying that you're gonna have actual funding resources immediately right away, but your resources boil down to much more than money. And like I said, it's a perfectly different scenario between very little now. And again, they have a lot in relation to the one person they abuse compared to, well, you know. So it'll be ironic and it'll be a very interesting sight to see. Again, you can try to see how individuals who wouldn't, even in the worst scenario, not be drugged or abused, not to the level they would me and anything else, perform in facing the very type of overwhelming power that they're trying to apply to me. Again, as I said, by all means, you have to understand the picture. Even if you could, I don't think you would want to begin with, but even if you could, never resort to anything similar to the method. Always, I was thinking to this and stuff. I heard it sort of off today. It's very convenient. Always keep your hands clean. Is my advice. But no extra thing. When I say it was preparatory, it's primarily preparatory. It's the term proper technology, if you will. At the end of the day, it had other goals, for sure. So keep that in mind. At the end of the day, as I said, they get caught in arrogance enough that they don't think that they need to do those things slowly. As a matter of fact, it's a beautiful example of the difference between both methods, right? Especially when they have the habit of being extremely overcautious. Which they love to call cowardice, which is interesting. Again, because of criminals abusing one person. That's very interesting. They have a secret concept of bravery. Who refuses to give up again, so I don't like to praise things, and this is essentially like self-praise, so I don't dive too much on that, but it's something that I always think to myself whenever they even reference something of bravery, because that's an inherent fact of this crime that never goes away, and you see that all the time. A single other person next to it, you know how terrified they were that they thought Queen Tanya, when they thought that Tanya was still behaving like a human being? Now, at this point, I don't think that they believe that anymore, but she should. Hell, you see how much lengths I go to? Same thing I talk about filth, right? How much I go to just to have rights assured and to be potentially free. And just the individuals that want to be taxed, that want to be... It's really shocking. Again, the difference between a homeless person and filth. And no, that has nothing to do with that. Because same way you can be a drug trapper and working in several other professions, they are things to be morally ambiguous. Because we know that things don't always play out the way that they're supposed to. And a little bit of compulsion never goes amiss. But at the end of the day, there are also members of such things that are indeed just immoral. Cats. I love how he looks sad as if he can do something bad. Anyway. That will be used against me, by the way, by the real victims of this crime. You have to show that one. One of the chocolate. Think of a dog, and that's a big problem. So how many just get cheese? There's stuff in that. I'm down. He's not touching them before I have to touch them movie. Plus chocolate experience. If he comes scaring him, I'm gonna let him in peace. He wanted that. Just so for the record, he flipped the ball in the mud, which didn't cause much problem. But because he wanted that, some perspective, like, listen to myself. What else? So much about as I said, those details about the proprietary nature of that and other things, I did not talk some of those things, and given that some of those things are fucking literal torture, psychological torture, every single day, abuses, people bragging about crime, criminals involving small, tiny children into their war crimes, something literal Nazis didn't do, famously. And all the rest. And I just love to have the explanations. You know how back in the day they're trying to say that I was a bad guy, so it's okay to abuse me, and I just keep blinking. I love to see how they're going to explain that to a reporter and all that. Saying, yeah, we thought that he was a homeless person or someone in need, so we thought it was okay to. And I was like, that is the level of intelligence. I might be overestimating them. It's one of those points when I was very confident that I was starting to definitely overestimate them, because, the whole point is you overestimate your crime, and you think that they overestimate them, which leads to underestimating them, and that's a major problem, which I realized. The thing is, as I said before, the actual explanation is that there are more than one group of criminals, and as much as I like to say that all criminals are the same, and they're not much different, especially morally, there is a major sizable difference between them. You'd see more active criminals doing more active things that function at a higher level of delivering hurt and pain and crimes than the normal criminals, as you see the ones in the mall. The ones in the mall, though, have knowledge. They are aware of the things being done, and that's what they chose to be a part of. And that is important, because as far as you're concerned, you can fully say that they are part of this based on the sheer level of coincidence. So even better, if any point you're concerned about how you're going to phrase intelligibility, you just trust people to have their own judgment and make their own judgments in life and tell them the facts. The fact of the matter is, they do specific quotes, sometimes down to specific phrases, most of which were 15 to 16 words, in exact same fashion throughout this crime that we get to hear for thousands of times, some of which are actually not common phrases at all, some of which are very specific, some words are very specific. I always have a very peculiar way of talking, which leads to this thing. Again, it's almost like I keep thinking that phrase from iRobot, where Sonny says, my father gave this to me, and in this case, he probably would be my biological father, but the Lord, but in a way. And it's not many people as well, it's not with me, but my point is, I suppose that's a good base for predestination and those who believe in that. Not quite my assumption. I believe that you can make choices. I could have chosen to leave home if I had done so back in the day, and if I had done so, just pretend I don't have to be actually. I would be good, but I'm humming here. I want to walk. Over there, it's very difficult to walk because there's a lot of mud, so all the time I'm stumbling on the mud. You saw me jiggling to side to side, which is still not their favorite thing. Again, this is the level. This is what I'm saying. You look at this and you think, okay, that's a joke, right? It's ridiculous criminals, and that's what I keep saying. All the other things, including dehumanization, including disfranchisement, which is no joke. That's a fucking war crime for a reason. This is literally what was done to minority groups in several places in a minor way, like you see in the U.S. And if you think that that's a minor way, and you dispute that, trust me, if you go to Europe, especially Eastern Europe, you see that happening in a colossal new scale. So Western and Eastern Europe, I also have the Holocaust, but most of the stuff can be more standard stuff in a specific time frame. So in an entire different scale, you have genocides happening with some relatively frequency, which didn't happen to happen in the United States. I mean, it did happen to get real, talk about real Americans, to pretty Native Americans. But after that, you don't see that happen at such a level of frequency, and they never really welcome in society, or you see more in the East, all those things, where they were just part of society, and that people decide just that they shouldn't be anymore. And again, that definitely want. Jews themselves suffered that quite a lot. You have Stalin, because certain types of minds think alike, and Stalin is his own Jew hate in his own way. But for what it's worth, the I really detest Stalin, but I'm not entering the rest on this right now. You know, when you have a thug mixed with factory worker in a position of influencing a lot of people, again, the so sorry, thinking about too many things in my mind. So imagine, for instance, I had the headphones there. I can guarantee to you, as a matter of fact, that it will be said that I was listening to something, and it's the point. The fact that it isn't, and they all see that, they think it doesn't count at all. So that's so low importance. I cannot think right now. There's too many drugs in it. Those would be psychological drugs. Notice the difference. The facts mostly behavior, personality, everything else. That might very well be the thing that he was trying to probe for. As you can see, I'm still half functional. And you might be witnessing not those crimes, but you might be witnessing the Mengele crimes as I speak. Maybe that's the test. Maybe they're testing some different things, seeing how it reacts to me. Because you notice the criminals in the back, I was not listening to them because they could just walk away, the emu strategy. And that